Welcome to Shop Talk Live. I'm happy to have back with me today my co-host, Roy Strasburger, founder of the Vision Group. Hey, Roy.
Hi, Carolyn. Great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, we had fun the last time. We're going to keep doing this. So I'm really excited to have with me today for today's episode, where we're going to be talking with a leading retailer hailing from Idaho, which is in the Western United States. And we're going to hear all about the company and their technology strategy. And so we're going to go ahead and get started, and let's bring on our first guest today. So I would like to introduce Robert Hampton, who is the Vice President of Technology Services and Innovation for Jackson Food Stores. Hey, Robert.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. So
Pleasure
Roy,
to be here.
Oh, of course. Roy, you've worked with Robert at least a little bit as a member of the Vision Group, which we talked about on a previous episode a few months ago. But before we jump in, do you want to tell us a little bit about the newest technology group before we kick it over to Robert to tell us all about Jackson's?
Sure. Thanks, Carolyn. Robert's part of a group called the Convenience Technology Vision Group, which is part of the Vision Group Network. And the Vision Group Network mission is to gather the insights of industry leaders and share them with all retailers for free. And we do that through a publication called Vision Report. We had our first meeting in March. The Vision Report that covers that meeting came out in May, and it gives a great overview of the discussions that we had, as well as a transcript of that meeting, so the reader can get the nuances of what it was all about and how people came to their decisions and came to their opinions. And we're really excited about the interest that's been gathering in the industry, and have gotten some really good feedbacks about it. If you'd like to find the report itself, you can find it at tvgsolutions.com. And Robert is a great contributor to that program, that meeting that we had. And we're really excited about him giving his time to the group, and especially appreciate his giving his time today to chat about the things that Jackson's are doing. So Robert, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Roy.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And Roy, thank you for that. I've had a chance to look through the report. Some really good insights. I mean, technology is never the same like the next day when you look at it. So innovation is constantly brewing, and especially in this industry as we get really technological over, 20 years ago even. So really great insight in there. So definitely check that out, and we'll link to that report in our show notes as well. So Robert, if you don't mind, would you be happy to tell us all about Jackson's? Now, I know you have a rather large operation with many different businesses out in Idaho and around in the region. So without further ado, tell us a little bit about Jackson's.
Sure. So Jackson's Food Stores were a vertically integrated business. We were founded in 1975. We're based here in Boise, Idaho. We're one of the top 5 privately held companies in Idaho, have about 5,000 employees, and revenue exceeding $4 billion. I'll talk a little bit about each of the companies you see here. First off would be Jackson Food Stores. That's our operation. We have about 300 locations in 7 Western states. We're branded Shell and Chevron, and we've grown primarily through acquisition, but we've also had a lot of new to industry stores, or NTIs as they're called, and we're recognized as an innovator in the retail convenience industry. I want to talk a little bit about Jackson Energy. So this is our fuel distribution company, and so we support about 1,300 locations. About 300 of those are our own stores, and then we've got a number of lessee dealers, multi-site operators, and commission dealers. And you can see there on the map, those are all the locations that we serve in the Western United States. And last year we distributed almost 1.1 billion gallons of fuel. And you can see the breakdown in wholesale and retail, and also the brands that we support. With Jackson Energy, we have Jackson Energy Logistics, and we deliver over 90% of the fuel that we supply. We have 93 transports with 185 drivers on staff. We pull fuel from about 58 different loading terminals, and we drove almost 11 million miles in 2022. Also, another part of our business that's not well known is we have what's called the Jackson Jet Center. And this is, we have 2 private terminals, in one here in Boise and the other one's down in Phoenix at the Sky Harbor Airport. We own and operate a number of jet and turboprop aircraft. We have charter service with in-house pilots. We do de-icing, refueling, ground service here in Boise. And interestingly, we have a parts warehouse, which we opened a couple of years ago, where we're selling aviation and aircraft parts worldwide. So that's been a growing business for us as well. Down in Arizona, we have 12 large format locations. They're anywhere from 3 to 5 acres. They do have a convenience store on the property, but it's a large car wash. There's a tunnel wash and also hand wash. But we do have ancillary auto services available. We do glass, alignment, express lube, things like that. In the pictures, you can see get an idea of some of the properties, and that one down on the lower right is one of the waiting areas where we have convenience products. I want to talk a little bit about Capital Distributing. This is our grocery distribution. And so that's been in business about 40 years as of this past March. In 2019, we outgrew our facility and we built a brand new location about 20 miles west of Boise. It was 250,000 square feet on 53 acres. So we had plenty of opportunity to grow it if needed. Originally, we had a 5-year plan where we said, this will get us through the next 5 years and then we can add on to the facility. Shortly after we moved in, about 2 years later, we outgrew it. And so we've already added another 67,000 square feet, which opened this past March. Capital has about 800 customers that we supply. So with Jackson Energy and Capital Distributing, we've got the fuel and the grocery. And so we're distributing to our own sites. And so anytime Jackson's grows, both of those companies grow as well. But as I mentioned earlier, in addition, they have a number of independent customers that we serve. And I'll touch on the independents a little bit later and how we interact with them. But it could just be the mom and pop shop down the street, or a single site operator. And so we might bring their grocery products to them as well as their fuel. And then I'd like to also add that in Capital, we built a kitchen and bakery. We basically have a food plant out at the new distribution center. And that's where we make our own food products, such as breakfast burritos, sandwiches, things like that. And you'll see some pictures coming up of that. But that allows us to supply our own sites with our own private label products. And that's been going really well for us as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about Jackson Bevco. So about 2 years ago, we purchased the 5th largest tobacco chain in the country, and that was called Tobacco Connection. They actually have 3 brands, Big Smoke and Bad Habits is their other one. They had a distribution warehouse, but we've subsequently integrated that into Capital Distributing. They primarily supply tobacco and alcohol, and there's no fuel. It's much smaller locations. They do have drive-throughs. And so interestingly, a lot of business goes through the drive-through. So at one location, I was told it's about 80% drive-through business in the location. They do have a very loyal customer base. And they, I've spent some time in there just kind of observing, and those folks really get to know the customers. Those customers come in every day. And they get to know, the staff gets to know the customers, and they have a great relationship with them. And so having this additional business kind of gives us a different customer base, if you will, because it's not the same customer that traditionally goes to a Jackson's. And they have other products that Jackson's doesn't carry. As an example, most of the stores have a humidor, and so they sell a lot of cigars in the stores, and we just don't have that at Jackson's. And so I'd also like to talk a little bit about, we do have 2 joint ventures. One One is with Shell, and that's it's called PacWest Energies, and it's out in the West Coast. And so we just Shell had some retailers that were getting out of the business. We went in with them, like Shell does with a number of other retailers across the country. I believe they have 12, 15 or so JVs, and so we have a JV with them. It has about 100 stores in it. And then our other one is Extra Mile. You may have heard of that brand. That's primarily with Chevron. And so Chevron, it's their higher end sites. And so there's an example of one there. That's a Jackson's that we've made Extra Mile. So Extra Mile is a franchise operation. And so we went in with Chevron, and we're 50-50 owners of the Extra Mile brand. We do all the IT for them. We do the accounting, finance, HR, things like that. And we help them grow the brand. And when we started, it was about 750 sites. And now I believe it's up to about 1,100. This has been over the last 5 years or so. And so that's really been growing, and a lot of great things going on there. And you're starting to see that move across the country. They were only in 3 sites when we started with them, and now I think they're in 7 or 8 sites. And so we've recently opened some sites down in Alabama and Mississippi. And so one other company that I wanted to talk about that's part of Jackson's family is part of Capital Distributing, and that's a software company called Supply Logistics Solutions. And that's the warehouse management system that we use out at Capital. And that was originally part of McLean. And so we bought that from Drayton McLean, and we went in with a couple of other suppliers across the country. And so we're part owners of this software company. They're based in Temple, Texas, near McLean, their headquarters. And we're the managing partner of that. And so we handle all the IT, and that's a great group of people, and we're happy to have that so we can modify the warehouse management system for our needs. And so that works out really well. And then here you're just seeing some photos of some of our different stores. A number of them were acquired, but like I said, we've done a lot of NTIs as well.
Well, Robert, that's really fascinating, and it shows that Jackson's is not just a convenience store company. I mean, you guys are doing a lot of things all over the western part of the United States. So it's very impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you, Roy.
Yes, an incredibly diverse portfolio of things to keep up with. It keeps you busy, I imagine.
For sure.
So, Robert, I know you've talked a little bit about what Jackson's has been doing, and how are you? Let's kind of jump into the technology part of it. How are you using the technology on the distribution, logistics? I know you said you're running a lot of the IT for other people. Is it programs that you're developing yourself, or are you using other packaged software and working on the distribution side?
Yeah, good question, Roy. Where possible, we do try to buy off the shelf. And specific to the distribution center, you asked about that. I did mention SLS, Supply Logistics Solutions. So if you will, it's kind of off the shelf, but since we're part owner in the company, we have the ability to customize it. But we've partnered them with other people, off the shelf software in the industry, such as Procat. And many of you might have heard of Procat. They do load right, ship right, tax right, things like that, a lot for distribution centers. And so we've been able to take the SLS software, integrate it with Procat, and modify it to suit our needs. And then part of, you asked about is, are we doing some custom work? And the answer is yes. When we built the new distribution center, we realized that we needed to track a lot of different, and there's a picture of it right there. We needed to track a lot of metrics and statistics so that we could, incentivize the pickers who are in the warehouse picking the product. And so we put, I think the number's close to 60 TVs, and there's a picture of the food plant, food production. But we've customized and built in-house what we call, it's a DOID basically, and it's a data display. And it shows things like pick rate per hour, and it incentivizes the pickers because it shows who's picking the fastest, pieces per hour. It shows, when you're loading the trucks, it shows how many totes are going in the truck, so you can get an idea of how close you are to being done, where the truck's going, things like that. And like receiving, so in the receiving area, there's a TV, and it shows all of the expected trucks to come in and what products are coming in and things like that. And so having all this information all over the facility, it's been really helpful. Like I said, it incentivizes to the workers, they get bonused off of certain metrics. And so that's all stuff we did in-house. We wrote all that and integrated it to ProCat and the SLS software.
So Robert, I mean, with all these, you could go in very great specific on everything, whether it's distribution or store. And I wanted to ask a little bit, I guess, focusing initially on the retail side, if that works, and then branching out a little bit further to keep up. Obviously you need to keep the lights on with technology. Those are the basic ones. Make sure things, work. But beyond that, there's a lot of new innovations coming out. And without sharing all your secrets, what are some of the big innovative projects that you've been focusing in a little bit on, either now or in the near future?
Well, sure. With innovation, we try to focus it in really three places. Like, is there something that can increase revenue? Can it increase EBITDA? And can it increase productivity? And when I say productivity, I mean that for both our store employees, but also for the customers. As we all know, the folks watching this video, we're in the convenience industry, and so we're selling convenience, right? And so how can we make the customer more productive? And so we found, like with innovation, sometimes, innovation doesn't necessarily have to involve IT. And I'll give you an example of that. How can I make, I sit in and listen to the regional managers and operations folks, and I'm listening to pick up on things that are problem areas for them. And, one of the things we do with our sites is focus on cleanliness of the store, right? And so, we know that people, go and clean the floors, and having a clean floor and a clean environment makes people want to buy fresh food products. So hearing that, gosh, we spend a lot of time cleaning. Well, I happen to run across a product that's an automated floor scrubber. And you set it up and it can scrub the floors 4 times a day, every day of the month, right? And so it's a subscription-based product. It's kind of cool. And that makes our store employees more productive because they don't have to focus on cleaning the floor. The floor is getting cleaned and they're not worried about it. And so that's an idea, an innovation idea that really has nothing to do with IT. I mean, the product itself doesn't even talk to a wireless. It just goes straight out to the internet. It's got a MiFi card or a wireless card in it. So that's kind of an example of how we're looking at innovation, and it doesn't necessarily have to be some elaborate IT project. Here's a device that's standalone. Just turn it loose and let it clean the floors and make everyone around it more productive.
So Robert, that's really interesting. And I've heard of floor scrubbers in larger locations like Walmarts or supermarkets, but you're finding it economical at the convenience store side, size type program, I take it. And do you feel like it helps with your slip and fall incidences and keeping the floors clean?
Yeah, so we have not, that's an example of something that I found. We have not tried it yet, but according to the company, it does, because it picks up debris, and it keeps the floor clean, and like spills, as you mentioned, it can clean those up. So certainly, and if something happens, if there is a spill, the employee can go and start the device, and it can go scrub that area right away. Okay. with some manual intervention. So that is a selling point of the product, yeah. But just to be clear, we haven't started it yet. I have seen it live in some other convenience brands, though.
Very cool. Thanks.
And I know you said one last question on that end, but I think in a previous, when you and I first met a little, or started talking a couple weeks ago, you told us about that you go out and visit the stores. It sounds like just one of the things I want to compliment you on is listening. You sound like you really get out there, and I think you were just coming back from a store visit or a multi-site visit, and also just listening to see what works and just kind of common sense almost. It sounds like decisions to innovate, just things that make processes work smoother or just lives easier, whether it is technology or, floor scrubbers. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I found you can learn a lot just by, going to the sites and just, obviously identify myself, and, I can just kind of talk and just chat up with the workers and just see, hey, what's on your mind? What's going on? What problems are you having? What's working well for you? And then just kind of going into the background and just observing, and man, you can learn a lot that way. And then, I will add, it's interesting, I spent a lot of time, I think many of you here in the States probably know John Jackson. He's the founder, and his son Corey, who's the president of Jackson Food Stores. But when I go around with them, we get out of the car, we start walking towards the site. John and Corey are picking up trash, in the parking lot, just, trying to keep the site clean. We go inside, walking around, talking to people. He's always facing product, right? See something, go and fix it, or pull something forward. And so that rubs off. And I find myself doing that. Like I've been visiting a number of sites lately, and go in and just walking around, I'm fixing product and pulling stuff forward and picking up trash in the parking lot. And so, it's really good example of leading by example, right? And we're all in this together, whether, the technology person or finance person or whomever, we still can impact the science.
Well, and I think that's a really good example of, from a technology point of view, of coming up with technology to fix specific problems that you've discovered from being involved in the business, as opposed to having technology for technology's sake, where you've developed a program, but there's not you've got a solution, and you're looking for a problem. You're approaching it from the point of view of being involved with the stores and pushing it forward, because you know what the problem is. And I think that, a lot of that also comes out from being able to analyze the data and the information that you get from the stores, which leads to coming up with progressive and positive solutions.
Yeah, data's huge for us. We built a data team, and as you guys all know, we're get millions of transactions, and so there's so much information that you can do with that data, and there's so many action points to it. It's really fascinating, and so our data team, focuses on that and sees, how we can impact the business with it.
Robert, that's an amazing segue. It's almost like we planned it, because I wanted to I wanted to bring on our final guest, who is David Waters, the Chief Product Officer for Retail Insight. And David, if you want to join us on the program. Now, David, Retail Insight does a lot of work with data, and David as well. You do a lot of work with data. So if you can just give us a quick elevator pitch, an overview of what Retail Insight does, and then we'll jump into a discussion here.
Sure. Yeah, so at Retail Insight, we build cloud-based software solutions to help our retail and CPG customers essentially realize the full potential from every store. So we think this is particularly important right now. I think everyone recognizes, that retail is at a huge inflection point at the moment, particularly in the post-COVID retail landscape, where they've been hit, with a frontline productivity crisis. You've got supply chains pressures left, right, and center. And obviously, we then got the huge macroeconomic challenges at the moment, not just for the retailer, but also for their customers. So really what we're seeing in the market is that there isn't enough people on the shop floor to do everything that needs doing. So basically, retailers and CPGs are using field agents to go into their stores, or recognizing now they need to manage by exception. And so for Retail Insight, it's quite simple. We try to maximize the productivity of in-store labor. Simply, we try and make sure that our availability solution makes all the products that customers want to buy, whether it's through bricks and mortar store or for online ordering. And of course, at times when there may be excess quantity, that we can exit those items at the most cost-effective price for whatever the objective function of the retailer is. So essentially, in a sentence, I'd say that our RI really supports good shopkeeping. I'm not sure, Caroline, you asked me my specific role. So as the Chief Product Officer for Retail Insight, I'm responsible really for designing and setting the product strategy for our company. Essentially, that really involves us focusing in on store operations excellence challenges. We build cognitive technology, as we call it. So this is blending artificial intelligence and machine learning methods and combining them with subject matter and domain knowledge. So when Robert then mentioned the importance of getting into store, talking to colleagues, recognizing, how it really works on the actual ground, real people and process, for us, that's what makes the real difference, rather than just being, a very clever set of mathematicians and physicists locked away in a dark room.
Yeah, David, that's really interesting. You mentioned AI and ML. We're doing some of that internally to look at the large volume of data. But one of the things we've done is partnering with academic institutions. As an example, here in Boise, we partner with Boise State in their computer science department, and had students participate in projects with us where they're going through the data and they're looking for trends and writing code that'll help us identify trends. One example that we've done is looking for voids, and when do voids happen, and is there a predictable way based on millions of rows of data that we can predict, hey, there's going to be some voids coming up, this could be an indication of fraud, something to go look at.
Yeah, I'm sure, as we're all aware, data sets are only getting larger. I think we all recognize there's latent value hidden within it. The challenge for most retailers, is recognizing how they can sort of use the right technology and mathematics to get that value out and pragmatically drive action. I think the day of diagnostics and insights sort of interesting, but you have so few people in stores. They need to be told, A, do this, B, do that, C, do that, and if you've got any time left, do D kind of thing. So I think we're seeing a lot of changes taking place in terms of how our retail customers and CPGs want to consume the output. So yeah, I'm definitely aligned there.
Well,
Actually,
sounds like,
oh, sorry.
like I say, that sounds like a great application for like artificial intelligence and being able to do some of the machine learning to put that into place. But that's a conversation for another day, not for today. So
I have to say, Robert, I was blown away with the complexity of your business, and it sort of raised a couple of quick questions on all that. Can I interject and ask a couple?
Yes, please.
So as a central function that tries to prioritize, given you've got so many complicated and very distinct, not only from an operations perspective, but you also said it's distinct sometimes from a customer point of view, how do you even go about prioritizing where the technology spend and time goes across the Jackson's food store and all those other businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it certainly is a challenge. Part of it is, and I mentioned earlier, you try to buy off the shelf so that you're not saddled with maintaining some in-house software that you've written. We used to write a lot of software in-house, say 15, 20 years ago, and just the upkeep of it, becomes tiresome. And you find yourself spending more and more time in just keeping the lights on than, innovation and other things. And so part of the prioritization is, and I go back to the three things I mentioned, does it improve productivity? Does it improve revenue, or does it improve EBITDA? And, if you focus on those things, it really helps you. Some of the prioritization things work themselves out. So some things are great ideas, but they just don't pencil out at the end of the day.
Given the complexity of the customer, what opportunities are there for technology transfer across the different functional areas, given that, what you need to know about them, their behaviors, maybe their demographics? Do you find it a challenge that you do have these distinct pools of customer behavior, and therefore your opportunity to upsell and cross-sell is limited?
Yeah, to some degree. And, part of that also, and this is a challenge for the industry as a whole, but part of that is if you're a branded retailer, then, you're beholden to some of the technologies of that particular retailer. I mentioned Shell and Chevron, that's who we are. So we can only use certain point of sales that are certified to be on the Shell and Chevron network, right? So those are some inherent challenges. You try to get around that by like having a loyalty program that we can use, where we can get some of those consumer insights and leverage that to make a better consumer offering. That's something I see in the industry. I call it the consumerization of IT. And, Apple has made things so simple, right? And, I had a boss that once just told me, I just want it to work like my fantasy football. And, it's so frustrating to hear him say that, but at the same time, he was so right. It's like, I want to start Pat Mahomes, so I just drag him from the bench over here. And, why can't the systems here do that? Or why can't it be so simple for the consumers? And, the consumer can go down the street and go to the local ice cream shop, and they've got an iPad and a little simple card reader, and you can scan and check out in 2 seconds. Why can't our systems be like that? And so I think as a whole, you bring up a great point, David. That's a problem. It's a challenge, I'll say, in the industry today. Is how do we get around that?
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to keep quiet for a minute and let somebody else ask some questions, unless you're happy for me to carry on.
Roy, did you had some, I know, in queue.
Yep. No, Robert, thanks for the overview and all that. And you, as you just mentioned, and Dave mentioned a few minutes ago, I mean, one of the key things about technology is helping employee productivity, employee efficiency at the store level. And I think I'm right in that you guys have been trying to do some self-checkout at your stores. How is that going, and what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, self-checkout for us, we've had it 18 months or so. Been using the product from Verifone. And here's an example you see right there in the center. We've got 2 self-checkout units, C18s from Verifone. It works really well. And this is an earlier picture, but we've changed the sign where it says self-checkout. We have it now where it's age-restricted items is okay. So we're taking the alcohol transactions and the cigarette tobacco transactions through self-checkout, and that's going really well. There's a closer picture of the bagging area. That's the C18, and then there you can see that other sign on the right. That's one of the newer signs. That particular site has 3 self-checkouts, and what we do is we kind of sandwich them in between the regular registers. We make it a destination, and we're seeing anywhere from 30 to 40% of our transactions go through the self-checkout. And Roy, to your point about what I said earlier, it makes the cashiers more productive. It makes the customers more productive, as I alluded to, because if there's a line at the regular checkout, they can just simply go to the self-checkout and get in and out. Especially if you walk in, it's a busy time, you just want a bottle of water, you can walk up, scan, and leave. You can do your loyalty as well if you need, and out the door you go. And of course, like with most retailers doing self-checkout, you have the folks who are like, well, I don't want to see, my favorite cashier, lose their job, what have you. It hasn't been like that because we put in our signs in the window like help wanted. Like we're putting in self-checkout, but we're still looking for people because there's so many other things that they can do that help the customer, ensuring everything's stocked, things like that. And so helping people find things. So Roy, I think it's been a big success for us. It's going really well. And we're really pleased with it.
Robert, as you went on that journey, SCO utilization of 30 to 40% is quite a good number. Clearly, it's a good labor saving. It may improve queue lengths and wait times. So there's lots of benefits of doing it. Have you seen any real downside from a shrink point of view, particularly when you're looking at some of those high value products that are going through the checkouts?
We haven't seen a huge uptick in that. There's always going to be some, and I think that's kind of inevitable. And you're starting to hear about that more in the industry, specifically in the grocery industry, where someone's, I don't know, they're scanning a sirloin steak, and they've put, they grabbed an item and it's a different barcode, and when it goes across, it rings up as 99 cents instead of $27. So we don't have a lot of that. We don't have, I'd say, opportunity for that in our sites. And so, being in many cases kind of a neighborhood store, we don't see that as much. I'm sure it does exist, but it hasn't been a huge issue for us.
And Robert, to your point, we were just on a convenience leaders vision group meeting a couple of weeks ago talking about AI. And one of the things that came up was companies like Walmart using vision AI from their security cameras to oversee self-checkout. And if they saw a mismatch between what it was being scanned and what the camera saw, they would freeze the self-checkout and have somebody come over and talk to the customer about it, to make sure they were scanning it properly. But that has been a big issue because self-checkout has led to some real shrink issues, certainly in the higher volume stores. So that was an interesting adaptation of the technology.
Yeah, good point, Roy. And we've looked at computer vision quite a bit. I hosted a panel at Connexus on computer vision. And certainly that is a really good application of it in areas where, like, especially grocery, right? I think they're seeing a lot of it, and computer vision is a great application of that.
So actually, leads me to another question in terms of, and then just maybe brings in what you've learned between the Vision Group and Connexus as well. Robert, if you could tell me a little bit, and obviously Roy, if you want to jump in a little bit too, what are the big technology trends that you're seeing? Now, we've talked about self-checkout and computer vision as both a security and a customer experience tool. Are there any other trends that you're seeing that you think are coming down the pike that you expect, whether you expect to use them or not? And I guess I'll start with you, Robert.
Yeah, sure. We're starting to see voice coming into play, and much like what voice did for the call center world 10, 15 years ago, how it really helped with employee retention, because you're able to capture customer sentiment and scorecard and have dashboards of how the interaction is going on a phone call. And recognize those employees who are doing really well, and take those learnings of what they're doing well, and improve training. And overall, that's improved the employee sentiment, and you start to see employee retention go up in call centers. So that's now coming to the convenience space. And so the ability to capture the conversation between the consumer and the customer service rep is really fascinating to me for a number of things. One is you can capture, like, promos. You can understand if a promo was offered and the consumer declined it, or if it was never offered. And of course, you can marry the conversations with the T-logs, transaction logs from the point of sale. And also all these conversations, they're immediately converted to text on the fly. And so for loss prevention and for monetization purposes, you could search for keywords, right? And so you could, search for Monster or Pepsi and see every time that was mentioned, and promos and things like that. So to me, that's one of the more exciting products coming. And there's a lot of uses from training, employee retention, loss prevention, monetization, things like that.
Roy?
Well, we've and as we're mentioning in this previous convenience leaders vision group that we had meeting, that trends that folks were talking about were using AI for predictive inventory ordering based upon seasonal and customer habits, predictive fuel pricing to try to price fuel based upon where they think the price is going, not what everybody else has been doing in the market. customer interaction inside the store, like heat mapping, similar to heat mapping, but showing where people are going, and dwell times before they purchase things. And basically what everybody says, and what Robert has mentioned and mentioned in the CTVG meeting that we had, it's all about coming up with not getting the data, but getting the actionable points that an employee can use, that the information tells them that this employee needs to do 1, 2, 3, or 4 things, and gives them that information. It's taking all that data and putting it into really an action point that people go out and accomplish something with that information.
Oh, I bet. And David, this is right up your alley. This is some of the things you were talking about earlier of just making sure that you take all those points and whatever format they're coming in, whether it's, transcript of a verbal or a video or but then that's another help wanted that you need. You need someone to analyze all that.
I think the fundamental aspect of that is making sure that, when you push data through AI and ML models, maybe deep learning models, it can be sometimes a bit of a black box. So when we think about driving action at store, if the features that go into the model are not actionable going into the model, they won't be coming out. So you've got, this is where the subject matter and the domain knowledge really needs to come together with the math to make sure that, we can identify prescriptive and clear action supported by the right data, obviously, that then when it comes out of the model, if it is the most important thing, the colleague then has very clear instruction in terms of what they need to do. They're not left paralyzed thinking, I don't know what this means. I don't know what I have to do. So yeah, I definitely concur with that. And to Roy's point, I think, if you think about a couple of the fundamental tenets now of retail, which were there when I started mathematical modeling 30 years ago, is demand forecasting and inventory accuracy. There's still real big challenges. There's some great techniques now that we're managing to sort of build in order to make things better, predicting the future, predicting, when you think about the good old days of having an item on a shelf for tomorrow, it's very different when you think that an online shopper is going to place an order now and wants their order picked in 7 days' time, and now you've got to make a choice as to whether you expose that item on the web catalog for that customer to be able to have it. So we are getting better and smarter with how we can use these mathematical techniques. They're not always perfect, but we're definitely getting better.
Well, we could go down a whole nother wormhole talking about online ordering, but we're not going to do that today. Well, no, that's great. I mean, I can see Robert going, oh no, let's not go there. That's a lot more. That's a whole nother episode. So we'll do that again next time. But for this sake, this has been enlightening. And thank you so much, Robert, for telling us about Jackson's, introducing us there. I haven't had a chance to visit, but I'd love to get out west one of these days. So I'll give you a shout if I do get there. David, I appreciate that you came on with us today and told us just help break it down a little bit in terms of the data science behind it. And Roy, as always, I love working with you. And can you tell us one more time where we can find this report? Because there's some great insights, as I recall, from Robert and many of his retail peers as well.
Sure. I mean, the Vision Group network has both the Convenience Technology Vision Group, which Robert is and 15 other industry leaders are part of, as well as the Convenience Leaders Vision Group. And both of them are putting out reports filled with lots of really cool information. You can find it at tvgsolutions.com. So come visit.
Sounds great. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for being with me today. And viewers, thank you so much for joining us today on Shop Talk Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.